This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, there are all kinds of things happening in our world today, but what's happening with energy is particularly alarming, because so much of our economy is driven from energy. Look at the farmer. You know, to produce food, it's not only the fuel, but it's the fertilizer. Like so much. I mean, all the products we buy, automobiles, all of the plastics and the resins and the metals and so forth are all coming from heavy dependence on energy. Well, resins come from petrol, from fossil fuels. So, you know, it is really so omnipresent in our economy, and when you see it going up so much, I mean, you know, we're in South Florida, and I bought gas today. It was $4.50. I put in the least costly, because if I put in premium, it was $5.50. Amazing. And that's in Florida. I don't know what they're doing out in California.
Well, you know, my Shell station has an unusual sign, because when you start getting too much, it says, see your accountant.
That's right.
And I thought that was unique. I've never seen that before.
Well, it's going to get to a point to where, you know, a lot of people, you know, they have like $75 limits on their credit cards to buy gas, right? I mean, they're not even going to have a quarter of a tank, and it's going to cut them off, right?
It's not funny. It's funny, but it's not funny.
This is the world we're going to.
Very scary.
And then you got an administration that's completely reacting to events, right? Oh, no, we're not going to embargo Russian oil. We're not going to embargo Russian oil. Then, you know, a lot of outcry. Look at these things, these images, these heinous acts by the Russians and what they're doing to the Ukrainian people. And then finally he says, okay, we're going to embargo Russian oil. Then he's sending delegations down to Venezuela to meet with Maduro. I mean, this guy is pure evil. They're going to be soon negotiating with the Ayatollahs over in Iran to buy. They just don't know what they're doing.
Well, maybe he was trying to get some advice from Maduro, because he was a bus driver. So I would think that Maduro knows how to fill a bus and fill a tank with fuel. Maybe Biden's folks need that, because they sure as heck need a lot of information. That's for sure.
And then we're going to hear from some of our congressionals, and they're going to be talking about the Keystone Pipeline, and, you know, we can be energy independent, which is absolutely true. I mean, this is a self-inflicted crisis as far as energy goes. We should be like standing tall right now, and it's like we're begging around the world to all these bad
I think it's a total humiliation for this country.
And what it means to our businesses, our entrepreneurs, those out there that's trying to build this economy, create prosperity for themselves, their community, for their employees, are getting slammed, absolutely slammed by this incompetence. Well, Rich, we're very pleased to have our first guest is Jordan Davidson Boyd, and she is from the Federalist, and we love the Federalist here at Made in America. Jordan,
Molly.
Welcome. Go, Molly. Welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to start out with a couple of sound bites. One from, you know, the extreme left, and they're joking about this whole thing, which is absolutely bizarre. Stephen Colbert, right? I mean, this guy is, I don't know what he's thinking. And then you're going to hear from the guy on the street who this really, really impacts. Let's listen to this.
But a clean conscience is worth $1 or $2. I'm willing to pay. It's important. Right. It's important. I'm willing to pay $4 a gallon. Hell, I'll pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla.
Unbelievable. Let's listen to the guy on the street. This is the guy on Main Street. Let's listen to what he thinks about this.
Sick to my stomach, really. When you think back, probably 2-3 years ago, we were energy self-efficient. We didn't have to buy oil or gas. Now things have gone just in the opposite direction, and they're killing us. They're killing the working man.
So, Jordan, I mean, wow, you couldn't get two different opinions about what's happening. What do you say?
Absolutely. Well, I think, like you mentioned, this is a self-inflicted crisis, and it's one that's exacerbated by the Biden administration. How insulting it is for a country that was once energy independent under the Trump administration, is now, like you mentioned, soliciting oil from countries that are allied with the country we're supposed to be punishing. It's ridiculous. If Biden cared about putting America and Americans first, he would have encouraged domestic oil production, lifted his restrictions on the oil and gas industry, but instead, he shut all that down. He repealed all the Trump administration initiatives. He has promoted his green energy agenda and completely put American interests on the back burner.
Well, that's exactly correct. So, they're trying to – I find it amazing that this whole scenario going back, to his inauguration day, and almost that day he signed his executive order ending Keystone, that it was supposed to be for what reason? So we would have a cleaner environment, that we would have, get off of fossil fuels, the evil fuel, that, of course, there's clean coal technology that nobody ever talks about. We reduced emissions by 45% over the last few years. We lead the world in making fossil fuels a cleaner, better, and readily available fuel and for energy in the Western world and for the whole world. And yet now that can't work, because if you really want to be clean, if you really want to have a moral conscience, as Stephen Colbert was talking about, I'm wondering what his conscience is clear about. Is it clear because we're not going to support the Russians and giving them the money, which to me is right out of insane asylum? Or is it because we're going to clean up the environment? I'm not sure where his conscience is clear. But here's what I'd like to say, Jordan, that to me, this was such a grand opportunity for this administration to go onto a war footing, which we are kind of in a war anyway, because it would look what the Russians are doing in the Ukraine, and say, we're going to lead the world, we're going to save you. America can do this. We have the capacity to do this. We can make it better. Count on us. But that didn't happen, didn't Jordan?
Absolutely not. I mean, like you mentioned, the president used his first year in office to choke domestic oil and gas production by suspending leases on public lands. He nuked the Keystone pipeline. He's done all of these things to hurt the American energy industry. And like you mentioned, we have an opportunity to take that back. America has the opportunity to be a beacon for energy around the world for all of these European countries that have been receiving their oil from Russia. But instead, Biden's negotiating with people like Iran and Venezuela, and domestic gas prices are rising dramatically. But who's Biden blaming for this? Not himself. He's blaming Putin, even though gas prices were rising dramatically well before Russia invaded Ukraine.
So we hear also from the administration, the Keystone pipeline, it wouldn't do anything. I mean, and by the way,
it wasn't pumping anyway, they said.
We have all these leases out there, and, what are you talking about? And I don't know. I mean, are they going to get shamed to bringing the Keystone pipeline back on because, just people are just going to be completely outraged by $10 a gallon gasoline here soon? Let's listen to what a former Keystone pipeline worker said just recently about the pipeline.
We tried to warn this administration back when they canceled the Keystone pipeline that it wasn't just the Keystone pipeline you were canceling. National security, foreign policy, and energy, they're all kind of, they go hand in hand. And when you cancel that pipeline, you put us in this position that we are facing today.
So, Jordan, there you go. I mean, even the very liberal Canadians are saying, why are you shutting down our pipeline? You got to put this pipeline, you got to get this pipeline going. I think, whether or not it's going to be pumping tomorrow or a year from now or whenever, it's like we're committed to do this, right? And we're putting the infrastructure in place. And I just think, it's going to really help. It's going to come online. It's going to come online very quickly, and we can do this, and we can do it very quick. But it's also saying we're serious about being an energy independent country, and you can't mess with us. You can't mess with our energy. That's a big statement to the world. Jordan, what do you say?
It is a big statement to the world, but what we've seen is it's simply not a priority for Biden and his administration. I mean, even this week he said rising gas prices and the shift away from Russian oil should, quote, motivate us to make the transition to clean energy. This is the Biden administration's goal. They want the green energy sector to thrive, and the only way they can do that is by nuking our domestic oil production and shutting down things and keeping things shut down like the Keystone pipeline. I believe it was White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki yesterday who said there's no chance that they're going to try and reopen that.
No, I just find it so strange that they don't want to do that. And by following this policy where they're going to go down the road of green energy, well, let's think about that. Who really benefits the most with green energy? First of all, you can't flick the switch anyway and go to green energy. But all right, they don't accept that. They think you can do it. And if you suffer along the way, well, that's your moral obligation to make the world a better place to live in. And also, if you can send some food for the unicorns that are growing, that we're going to be breeding, we want you to do that. But it looks like to me, Jordan, by doing that, we've created an axis of power that really is not a good idea. That's Iran, that's China, that's Russia. Those three countries as an axis of power.
Don't forget Venezuela.
Well, and you can throw Venezuela into that as well, of course. I left that out. Thank you so much, Dr. Neal. But to me, it looks like, again, Biden's administration and Biden is creating another disaster for us downstream.
Jordan, hold that thought for a second. We got to take a quick break. We're going to be back just in one moment. Welcome to Made in America. This is Neil Asbury together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Jordan Davidson Boyd from the Federalist, a very, very great organization. I love reading their work. You see them all over the place. Very, very high quality journalism and really addressing the very big issues that we're faced with as a country. But Jordan, you know, how do you do, like Dr. Rich just said, I mean, how do you go? Hey, look, I wish that, you know, there was alternatives. I think everybody does. That, you know, there would be economically viable alternatives. And hey, look, I think it'll be really cool someday to have an electric car. And if the economy goes in that direction and the
market demands it.
The market in the pricing to where people can afford it, right?
Correct.
And you got to charge it. I want to drive across America. You know, I want to know that I could not get stuck somewhere on Route 66 in the middle of nowhere and a coyote's going to come there and take my food away or something. I mean, I don't want that. I want to be able to travel around freely. And someday that will come. I mean, what do you do? 95% of the cars. Where's a junkyard big enough to put 90% of American cars in this junkyard or these landfills? I mean, how is that going to work? I mean, it just doesn't make sense at all, Jordan, what they're trying to do here. The green energy. You can't turn this on a dime. Why don't they understand that?
I think they do understand that. I mean, this is an ideological unicorn, and despite the logic that says, you know what, making these goals like we're going to be 100% green energy by, 2050 or something, they know that that's unreasonable, but it still helps them accomplish their political agenda. And, on the point about China and Russia and all of these countries that are really our foreign enemies in a lot of aspects, they're allying, and Joe Biden's just handing them more material every day. I mean, he's completely nuked our foreign policy, and with the help of the corporate media, he's gotten away with it without a lot of scrutiny.
Well, I think that's exactly correct. And the sick part, this week, Kerry, I didn't even know he liked to be called the climate czar anymore. That's kind of, an oxymoronic statement. The climate czar when Russia's doing this thing. I don't know if he wants that.
That's a good point.
I don't think he wants to be. I'm saying that right now. Kerry, get your act together. Bad idea.
You can't use emperor because that's China. No, so you can't use czar.
Can't do that.
So
can't do that.
I don't know what we're going to do.
But let me go back to this point. So Kerry says this week, I think we need to reduce emissions by another 45% by 2030. I don't know who he consulted with. His mother? I have no idea. Maybe there was a birthday party. They were talking. I have no idea. Maybe it was on his private jet. Oh, that's right, his private jet. Maybe on his private jet they had the conversation. So now he wants to make it even crazier, that we're going to reduce emissions by 45% coming by 2030. I don't know how we're going to get there. I don't even know how we're going to get to electric. So it just seems like they're compounding it. Neil?
So here's another soundbite, Jordan, I like to listen to. It's Congressman Gallagher from Wisconsin. Let's listen to this.
Now, Harris, if you add on to this absurdity with Russia, the fact that this administration is contemplating reviving the Iran deal, well, they may start to justify that by saying we need to bring Iranian crude onto the international market. don't pay attention to the fact that they're the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. They're close to getting a nuclear weapon. And oh, by the way, they win in this deal, Russia wins, and China wins in an Iran deal. It makes absolutely no sense. And the fatal flaw in their approach is that the administration is still being held hostage by the climate change lobby led by the high priest of climate change, John Kerry, and it's undermining our national security.
So there you go, the high priest of of climate change, John Kerry, and and he even said, Rich and Jordan the other day, that the bigger threat was not the Ukrainian war, which is absolutely terrible. I mean, look at those people, those children, those mothers.
Oh, it's awful. It's so out of touch with reality.
It was climate change. I mean,
climate change.
I mean, that seems in this time of peril, what's happening with humans right on our television, and you see this, and that seems like completely out of touch to me, Jordan.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, climate change is just a Democratic excuse to fulfill an agenda. And, if they really cared about the climate, I don't think they'd be striking deals with people like Venezuela, who produce 500% more methane than U.S. producers. Obviously, the goal here is not to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If it was, we wouldn't be doing deals with people like communist China, who pollute their air every day. I mean, it's simply not the true goal. The true goal is to assume power and accumulate it. And like you mentioned earlier, I mean, the people who are going to profit off of this green energy aren't going to be the regular Americans who are paying the price now.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we're going to hear one more clip here. It's Senator Cornyn. He's going to kind of sum it up as far as the results of Biden's energy policy for us.
We're hearing from the administration, well, maybe we should buy some oil from Iran again, or maybe we should reduce sanctions on Venezuela, that corrupt dictatorship, and get more oil from them.
That's a product of our bad policies here at home when it comes to domestic production, that we would have to turn to Saudi Arabia or Russia or Venezuela in order to get the energy we need to help bring down gas prices at the pump.
See, the thing I don't understand, Jordan, is that whether we make it here or there, it's still the same amount of fossil fuel. But like you said, American technology is much cleaner. It's much, much cleaner. So if they really wanted a clean climate, make it in America where we have regulations. I just don't know. It's like we're not, if we buy it from overseas, we're not using it. I don't know. It's bizarre. Jordan, unfortunately, we're out of time. Jordan Davidson Boyd, she's from the Federalist. Jordan, we really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, folks, we have Matthew Dickerson coming on, and he is from the Heritage Foundation, and we're going to talk about the recent spending bill that has just been passed. Stay with us.
Promoting American industry. This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Welcome back to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman, along with my good friend and partner, Neil Asbury. We're both in the studio, and we're having a really good conversation. I mean, we had this really great conversation on energy. I mean, everyone's talking about energy right now. All you have to do is go to the gas station, and no one's happy. All of a sudden, strangers are talking to strangers, and they're trying to find, like, group therapy at a gas station. Like, oh, well, I spent 116. How much did you spend? 50. 50. I spent 116. So no one's ever trying to figure out how to get by with what's happening with the Biden administration. But it is funding time again, Neil. And I guess when it's funding time, we start hearing the word omnibus. And then we start, well, we're going to have an omnibus, bill. This is going to go through. And people start looking, they glaze over. When you say, well, what is an omnibus bill? And they say, ask me another question. I'll come back to that one. Is it a multiple choice? Can I do it that way? And no one seems to know what they're talking about. So we're really lucky. On the show right now, we have Matthew Dickerson. Matthew's the director for the Grover and Hermann Center for the federal budget at the Heritage Foundation. And we've had lots of folks from the Heritage Foundation over the years. So, Matthew, we're really delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on.
We're delighted because a lot of people really want to understand what is an omnibus bill. It comes up, at least once a year, maybe twice a year. It's usually when we're running out of time and we have to fund the government. and everyone's going in circles. And then the next thing you know, they're going to come out with about $2,500, 25 pages of a bill that basically no one reads. They get the bill for dummies. They get the cliff notes on how to get by this whole thing. So, Matthew, what is an omnibus bill, and what does this mean going forward right now?
You're exactly right. And that's D.C. speak when they take all the normal, regular funding bills that they're supposed to pass by October 1st every year, and they just bundle them all together. Normally, there's an agriculture spending bill. There's a transportation spending bill. There's a bill for the Department of Defense. They're all supposed to pass individually so members have time to comb through and make wise decisions about how they're going to spend the taxpayers' money. Well, they never do it on time. And so what the congressional leadership does is they get behind closed doors and they do all sorts of horse trading. You get this, and ultimately it comes out and there's a 2,700-page bill that's going to spend $1.5 trillion. And like you said, nobody's read this thing.
Well, you did a nice piece. People should know that in the Daily Signal, there's a piece that Matthews coined. It's 8 ways massive omnibus spending bill is a mistake. So let's go. Why is it a mistake? I can think of a couple of reasons why half the Congress doesn't read it anyway. But why is it a mistake, particularly when you're in such an inflationary period? And everybody right now is suffering. I mean, we started the segment talking about energy, and energy is really feeding the inflation. But one of the things that's really been feeding the inflation is all this spending that the Biden administration has been doing with all this funny money that's out there, as Neil used to call it. And why is it bad? And where are we going to go with this? How is it going to make it even worse?
That's a really key point. This is going to spend $1.5 trillion, more government money pumped out into the economy. It's all going to be financed by the Federal Reserve, more printing. So what is that going to result in? More dollars in the economy chasing fewer goods and services, which is going to add fuel to the inflationary fire that we have. We just got the new inflation numbers this morning, 7.9% year-over-year inflation. We haven't seen inflation numbers like this for 4 decades. And so we're just going to be pumping money out for things like green energy subsidies. That's not going to help the problems that Americans are facing around the country.
So Matthew, who has voted for this, and like who's on board and who's not on board, and what's the next steps?
It passed in the House of Representatives late last night. It came out at
was it partisan? Was it along partisan lines?
Yeah, really. How did that come out?
Members of Republicans and Democrats in the House both voted for it last evening. It's going to be up before the Senate today or tomorrow, and they're going to try to cram it through with Republicans and Democrats voting for it.
And why would Republicans vote for this?
Well, if you look at what they've cobbled all together, there's money for Ukraine. There's important money for our Department of Defense. And so what Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden are threatening to say, you got to vote for all of our crazy liberal spending items, or else we'll go out and say you don't support the national defense. You don't support helping. And
what are some of those
Ukraine.
crazy liberal items that's in here?
There's all sorts of money for green energy subsidies, billions and billions of dollars. There's more money for the IRS. Planned Parenthood is going to get hundreds of millions of dollars from this spending package. There's all sorts of woke pork spending items to do things like promote equity for shellfish aquaculture in Rhode Island.
Equity for shellfish agriculture.
Aquaculture, yeah.
You got to get your oyster somewhere.
Exactly. And
wait a minute. Maybe you should have the right color lobster. Maybe I'm being politically incorrect when we eat a lot of lobster down here in South Florida, and I don't want to get in trouble with my kids.
I like the blue. I want my lobster to be blue.
Well, what about South African lobster? I don't know. I'm getting worried about this. Hey, let me ask you a question. That part of the problem, we've been hearing this since you're right. It was passed in the middle of the night, so to speak, but something was removed. It appears that the Democrats, Pelosi, gave up the COVID-19 additional funding. I think we should look at that for a second. Matt?
And I think that's actually one of the good things that actually happened yesterday.
100% with you on that.
They wanted to jam through even more COVID emergency spending that would double down on the bad policies that they have been putting out for the last couple of years. And Republicans had fought to actually, let's take some of the COVID money that hasn't been spent yet and reallocate that to the new COVID spending if the administration thinks that it's so important. Well, the Democrats don't want to actually take any money away from anything. And so they threw a fit and they actually just took the new spending out.
So we only have about 25 seconds left. Let me ask you a question. So when it goes to the Senate, how do you think it plays out in the Senate? Because that's going to tell us something.
Yeah, well, I think that it looks like there's momentum to pass the bill so that they get out of town for the weekend, which I think is unfortunate.
Well, if there were Republicans who voted for it in the House, there'll definitely be Republicans voting for it in the Senate. So anyway, I guess we're stuck with it. I guess it's the times we live in.
Well, listen, Matthew, it's been great to have you on the show. Matthew Dickerson, who's the director for the Grover M. Hermann Center for the Federal Budget at the Heritage Foundation. Matt, it is so great to have you here. Thanks so much for helping us understand what Omnibus is all about.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. We're going to be right back. Neil and I have some really interesting stuff to talk to you about. A lot more energy. We're going to help you figure out why you're paying so much, and then maybe we'll make you feel better about it. Welcome back to Made in America. This is Rich Rothman along with my good partner and friend Neil Asbury in the studio. And we're having some very strong conversations about energy because everybody's having very strong conversations about energy right now. You can't get away from it. I mean, it is dominating and it's pervasive, Neil, if you think about it. You can go on at 3 o'clock in the morning and you see live from the Ukraine what's going on there. And it doesn't matter what they're showing or what they're talking about. Ultimately, it comes back to Russia. It comes back to Russian energy. It comes back to, Western Europe being dominated by Russian energy and the leverage that the Russians have on Europe in general, particularly Germany. It's up to 70% of their energy comes from Russia. So it's a very, very important topic. So what we're hearing now is that petrochemical, hydrocarbons, fossil fuels, very, very bad. Biden administration trying to shut it down in this country since day one, right, Neil? Day one, he shut down, the Keystone Pipeline. And by the way, there were 5 other pipelines that he cut down. There are 6 contracts to export liquid, natural gas to Europe that's been sitting for a year, and the EPA will not approve it because it's got to be approved by the EPA to get on the ship to go to Europe. It's sitting here. They need it. They're getting it from Russia, and it's literally sitting here because the Biden administration won't approve the 6 contracts that have been sitting since the day he became the president. That's pretty scary stuff.
No, absolutely, and it's we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, he ran on this. He's controlled by the far left of his party, and I think he's going to pay an incredible price. I mean, he's going to pay an incredible price this November. I mean, Americans are just not going to respond favorably to blame it on Putin, blame it on Putin.
Do that.
Before it was blame it on Trump. Now it's all blame it on Putin. I mean, but, you got elected to be president of the United States. I mean, you said you had a plan. You said you had a plan. You said, well, first of all...
And you had 40 years of diplomatic
and you're going to
integrity.
unite us, and you're going to bring us all together, and we're going to all be one big, happy American family. I mean, we're just as divided as ever. The world is more divided than it has been forever. You look at the economic indicators, the key indicators in our economy. Inflation is through the roof, energy prices, and now we hear the farmers are predicting.
That's right.
Like catastrophe, Rich.
Yeah, exactly. What people don't understand, and we touched on this earlier in the show, that when you have fossil fuels, from petrochemical fossil fuels, hydrocarbons, you derive nitrogen-based fertilizer. You must have this to grow the crops that we have in the United States on a mass level. You must have this nitrogen. You must have this, fertilizer. So a farmer, just this week, a major farmer, he has 16,000 acres that he farms. So he's a Heartland USA, Neil. He is Main Street Farming USA. And he has a really dire warning that he just did on Tucker earlier this week. Let's take a listen.
Soaring fertilizer prices are likely to spike food prices. If you're upset that gas is up $1 or $2 a gallon, wait till your grocery bill is up $1,000 a month. And it might not just manifest itself in terms of price. It could be quantity as well. Empty shelf syndrome may just be starting.
I mean, so Rich, I mean, this is a farmer. I mean, we're talking about the bread basket of the world.
Right.
We're talking about feeding the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you be secure when your food supply is not secure?
When they look like the painting The Scream, we're in trouble. When they're, they have their hands on their face and the guy's screaming, that's what the painting's all about. It's a very famous painting. Well, he's very, very concerned because think, as we move forward, and he said they're starting to do their planting pretty soon. They do planting, like late March, they plant and it comes, due in the summer and so forth. Even if we opened up everything in America right now, because Biden waited so long, that it will not help us. It's too late. This is the mantra for this whole administration: too little, too late. Well, it is too little, too late. Even if Biden had this moment of epiphany, and he said, "You know what? Oh my God, what am I doing? I got to open up the energy in the United States." It won't help us. It won't help us because they're going to be doing the planning before the help gets here. So the cavalry may be on the way later this year, but the cavalry is not going to come soon enough to save us to get these higher prices. So, and on top of that, couple that, Neil, with the fact that the Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. Ukraine supplied an enormous amount of wheat in the world market. That's not there. It's not going to be there. So there's more emphasis on the United States and Canada, I would think, to do the right thing and get the wheat, get the products, get the agricultural products that we need. But the administration, once again, where there are, their status ideologue attitudes, that we're not going to use fossil fuels, we're not going to open it up, we're going to hold it back in the United States, we're going to go to our enemies in Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, and get what we need. But even if we had that right now, it's too late, because they don't have the fertilizer for this next growing season.
Yeah, I think, one of the big underreported stories is exactly that, is that this isn't just our energy supply right now we're talking about, it is our food supply. And
that's scary.
And that's scary because, fertilizers are the reason we have this abundance of food, and that food is very affordable, and we have enough, and we actually have a surplus. We can ship a lot of our surplus overseas. A lot of countries depend on this American surplus in the form of American aid, food aid, sending food overseas. We're a very generous country. We're a very prosperous country, at least in the past. We've had this capability, and we've done really, really great things with it. And now, when you see these energy prices spiking, it's not just our gas, it's just not our energy bills, it's not our electric bills, it's not our heating bills, but we're talking about our food security now. Hey, Rich, we got to take a quick break. We're going to be back here just in a moment. Rich and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day. Stay with us. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Hey, Rich, man, we've had a great show. It's full of passion, some great discussions, some really smart people who's done a lot of publishing and a lot of work out there to, kind of shine the light, shine the light on some of these topics, which are so fundamentally important. A lot of we've had a lot of really good fun with Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, and in our final segment of the show, we've heard from Senator Kennedy many times. But another favorite senator of ours is Senator Manchin. Happens to be a Democrat. That's great. And I had lunch with my mother this week, and very staunch Republican. I mean, like,
God bless her.
Republican, like, all the way. Always has been, by the way. She's from Kentucky. And back when, she was a Republican in Kentucky, I mean, at that time, Kentucky was very, very Democrat. I mean, so she was going against the grain, back when Kentucky was a very reliably blue state. And by the way, West Virginia has always been a very reliably blue state until lately. And Manchin, who is, ostensibly a Democrat, but he's not really a Democrat. He even sits with the Republicans during the State of the Union address he did the last time, which I thought was amazing. But my mother this week said that, Neil, do you think that Senator Manchin is going to switch parties? I says, Mom, I don't think he's going to do that.
No, I don't think he is either.
She says, well, if he would run for president, I would vote for a Democrat, and that would be the first time in my life that I ever voted for a Democrat. So, I mean, he's really ingratiating himself. I mean, and she said, I says, Mom, why would you do that? She says, because I trust him. I think he tells the truth.
That's an interesting statement, because you wonder why in a state that's so dependent upon fossil fuels, and the Democrats are so anti-fossil fuels, and Manchin's a Democrat, how does he keep his job in the Senate if people are thinking the opposite direction that he is? And I think what your mother just said kind of defines it.
He will not vote against the state.
Because they trust him, don't they?
Yeah,
they must.
Well, see, my father was from West Virginia. This is a real Hatfield and McCoy thing, right? The Hatfield and McCoys was about West Virginians and Kentuckians, right?
Funny guys.
There's a lot of rivalry going there. Louisiana, Kentucky, and Fort Gay, West Virginia, and that's my uncle has been a pastor, minister in the Baptist church in Fort Gay, forever. There's been an Asbury that's been the pastor there. So, I mean, we know that part of the world really, really well. Let's listen to Senator Manchin.
It makes no sense at all for us to continue importing energy from Russia, where they are attacking a friendly nation, seeking democracy, and that the whole world has rallied behind. Nor does it make sense for us to call on OPEC countries to increase production when we're not willing to do it ourselves, despite our abundant resources.
Well, there you go. Despite our abundant resources, using our own resources.
That's what people can't understand.
That's what he's saying.
Nobody
Using
can understand
our own
that.
Resources. I mean, come on now. Absolutely crazy. But we had to get Senator Manchin in there. I mean, he's such a wonderful guy. God bless him.
Listen,
he stood up.
He put up with so much stress. We have no idea, and we really don't have any idea, what horror that he faced from his party.
What they tried to blackmail him with and everything else that was going on.
No question about it. They're not nice people.
They couldn't corrupt him.
That's right.
It's amazing.
He wouldn't cave.
Because, the real story there is what we don't know, what was going on behind the scenes, and the leverage and the power that these people brought down on this man.
Listen, it must have been pretty hard because he was looking a little haggard towards the end of that whole scenario. So, bless his heart. The guy did the job. He did the job to which he was elected. That is an amazing thing to have people in Congress do that, and the Senate.
Well, he did not go against the state. Let's listen really quick. We got just a little time left with Speaker Pelosi for the reasons of the low poll numbers of President Biden. People just don't get it, she says. Let's listen.
Because for people to appreciate what the president has done and that working together with the Congress, they have to know what it is.
They have to know what it is.
They have to know what he's doing. You see, the lead up to that.
It's all public ignorance.
Yeah,
it's all public ignorance. Everybody's ignorant. They got to know what it is.
Of course, it's everyone's fault but Biden. See, Biden, according to Pelosi, and she looked like she should have been wearing her high school cheerleader outfit during the State of the Union because she stood up a lot. She got a lot of exercise that night. Her hands were doing this thing. She was doing the hanky-panky with her hands, and she stood up and cheered and put her hands up. And Chuck Schumer saw that, and he stood up and put his hands up. He wants to be a cheerleader. You know what I mean? Chuck Schumer was out there. He was standing up when it was the wrong time to stand up. He was so excited. It was amazing. But what she's saying is that the reason people don't give him good numbers is that they don't understand the good he's done and how he's really worked with Congress. Really.
And to get things done.
Get things done. For us. For the people. Sure.
Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.